I'm Martha, 55 years old, living alone in a small house in a sparsely populated neighborhood. Opposite my house is a similar house belonging to a girl named Ashley. That young girl moved here not long ago. From the first day, I noticed that she was always alone. Every day, Ashley leaves the house early in the morning and returns late at night, always looking exhausted and drained. I don't know why, but I feel a special concern for her. Maybe Ashley reminds me of my daughter, who passed away from a severe mental illness 3 years ago. A young girl living alone in this area, with no friends or relatives visiting. So I often try to find ways to talk to her, asking a few questions, sometimes asking for a bit of spice, or asking her to check something in the house for me. But I noticed Ashley always kept a certain distance from me. She wasn't rude, but she never truly opened up. Every time I looked at her, I always felt something was wrong. One night, while I was reading a book, I heard loud arguing coming from Ashley's house. A man's voice rang out, harsh and threatening. Then, there was the sound of furniture crashing, dragging across the floor. I jumped up, my heart pounding. I tried to listen more clearly. Then came a frightening silence. An unsettling feeling arose, making it impossible for me to stay still. My instincts urged me to do something. I quickly ran to Ashley's house. But as I neared the door, I stopped. A stream of thought, like an invisible thread, pulled me back, making me hesitate. The house was dark, silent, as if nothing had happened. I tiptoed around to the side window, leaned down, and pressed my face against the glass to try to peer into the darkness inside. But all I saw was an empty space, no one inside. After a moment of hesitation, guilt began to swell, and I quietly returned to my house, burdened with unanswerable questions. In the following days, Ashley seemed more frantic than usual. She always kept the curtains tightly shut, entered and exited the house with a watchful eye, occasionally looking around as if someone were watching her. I thought about asking if something was wrong, but she kept pulling further away from me. Then, one night, when I went out to take the trash, I saw Ashley dragging a large trash bag to the back of the house. She had her back to me, but her skinny shoulders were trembling under the streetlight. I was about to call out to her, but then I stopped. A feeling of unease crept over me. The next morning, I gathered my courage and knocked on Ashley's door. "Good morning, Ashley. I wasn't intending to bother you, but I haven't seen you outside lately. Are you okay?" She forced a smile and said work had been stressful and she needed to rest. "The other day I heard a man's voice in your house, didn't I?" "You must have been mistaken. I just need to rest." She quickly shut the door. I knew something was wrong. Just 2 days later, Ashley moved away. She didn't carry many things, only a small suitcase. That afternoon, once I was sure she was gone, I approached Ashley's door. The door was unlocked. I hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open. Ashley's house was empty, everything clean, with a strong smell of cleaning products, an almost frightening scent. I returned home, pushing everything aside. After all, she was gone. A few days later, I sat in the living room with a hot cup of tea, letting the voices from the news fill the silence of the house. The police are investigating the disappearance of Matthew Hendricks, 38 years old, a director at a law firm in the city. He was last seen on Friday night and has since gone missing. A cold shiver ran down my spine. The name of the company. I had heard Ashley mention it before. I remembered the late nights when Ashley came home exhausted, looking drained and worried. And then I remembered that night. The arguing, the angry voice of the man, the loud crash, the deadly silence. Oh my God! I sat frozen in my chair, a horrifying thought slowly emerging. A few days later, the police arrived in my neighborhood. The police asked me for any information I had about her, and I answered truthfully. The police had a search warrant for Ashley's house later that afternoon. I, along with the neighbors, stood at a distance watching. A little while later, 2 construction workers arrived with specialized equipment. The sounds of hammers and drills rang out for a while, and an object, wrapped tightly in hundreds of layers of tape, hidden under cold cement, emitting a strong, foul smell, was quickly removed by the police. Those who witnessed it knew exactly what was inside. I remembered her gaunt, haggard face and the perpetually sorrowful look in her eyes. No one knows I heard the arguing that night. I closed the curtains, but the feeling of unease still clung to me. I looked down at my hands. The teacup was still warm, but my hands, they were cold as ice.
Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you turn to these videos as a gentle way to unwind and ease into sleep. So, before you drift off tonight, could you help me with a small favor? Just leave a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. My goal is to hit around 200 likes within the first 24 hours. Simple actions like these help YouTube appreciate the content and spread the show to more people. Now then, let's dive into tonight's horror stories. 2 months ago, to celebrate our 1,000-day anniversary, my girlfriend and I decided to go on a memorable glamping trip. Even though our budget was tight, I managed to book a newly opened glamping site in a remote town. Everything in the pictures looked like paradise until we actually got there. Contrary to its glamorous appearance, the interior was quite disappointing. In the photos, everything looked spotless. But when we stepped inside, the floor was peeling and looked unfinished. The owner claimed he had cleaned it 3 times before our arrival, yet I saw hair and some food wrappers scattered across the floor. Furthermore, when we asked for help lighting the charcoal for our evening BBQ, which we offered to pay extra for, the glamping owner just pointed to a torch lighter and a pile of charcoal already set up in front of the tent. He said, half jokingly, half seriously, "This stuff's easy, you can do it yourselves. Just let me know if you can't." Although his words seemed casual, his attitude was quite cold, as if he was trying to suppress annoyance. I felt uncomfortable, but with my girlfriend there, I didn't want to ruin the mood, so I just kept quiet. That evening, we had our BBQ. We breathed in the mountain air, sipped wine, and felt truly happy sharing that moment together. But the real problem started after we finished dinner and went inside to our room. First, the bathtub wouldn't drain properly. Then, when I lay down to sleep, I heard a loud flapping sound. I checked and realized it was the tent flap on the window, not properly secured, being blown by the wind. We couldn't sleep. It was a truly terrible night. You're probably wondering if I complained to the owner. No, I thought it would just escalate the tension. Instead, I left a 1-star review with honest comments. We cut our trip short to 3 days. Luckily, my girlfriend still felt okay about the trip overall. About 3 weeks later, I received a call from that owner. He apologized, saying he had been busy with the resort's soft opening and was late getting back to us. He claimed to have fixed the previous issues and offered us a complimentary stay voucher. I was grateful for his kindness, but also felt a little regretful for leaving the 1-star review. That weekend, we cleared our schedules and returned to the town. The interior of the resort really had improved, to the point where I wondered if this was even the same place we had stayed before. The owner even personally prepared a BBQ for us. His service was incredibly attentive, to the point of making us feel a bit uneasy. I found it strange. We were the only guests that day. When I asked about it, the owner casually said, after that 1-star review, we were affected a bit. Seeing his nonchalant expression, I felt embarrassed and said I'd delete my old review and leave a 5-star one. but he replied, "No need anymore." His face, when he said that, was unusually cold, but just a second later, he returned to his friendly demeanor. "Enjoy your meal." I stared blankly as the owner walked away. Around 11 p.m., we were watching TV when we suddenly heard a rustling sound outside the window. I went to check, and a figure abruptly popped up. Both my girlfriend and I jumped and screamed. It turned out to be the owner. "I just wanted to check if you're enjoying the service." "We're enjoying it very much, thank you." "All right, I'll head back to my quarters. Just call if you need anything, okay?" He left, and this time, I started to feel genuinely uneasy. That night, my girlfriend woke up thirsty. I was drifting off to sleep when suddenly, a blood-curdling scream from my girlfriend jolted me awake. Rushing to her side, I was shocked to find a very large snake slithering across the floor. My girlfriend couldn't even stand. Luckily, she wasn't hurt. I quickly pulled her and we ran out, straight to the car. I tried to call the owner to deal with it, but he didn't answer. My girlfriend was completely panicked, crying hysterically, and demanding to go home immediately. I hesitated because I was practically naked, and all our belongings, including my phone, were still in the room. Suddenly, the owner appeared right outside, pressing himself against the car window. "Where are you two off to in such a hurry? You haven't checked out yet, have you?" I quickly opened the car door and jumped out, feeling incredibly frustrated. "Do you know what's in that room? It's a snake." "A snake?" His indifferent attitude truly enraged me. "How can you say that? Send our luggage in the room by express delivery or mail. We're leaving." Suddenly, he pulled out a knife and overpowered me, dragging me back into the glamping tent. My girlfriend stayed in the car, pleading continuously. We struggled fiercely in the room. I was injured on my arm and leg, and the bleeding made me weaker. He screamed like a madman. "You come here, use all sorts of services, and then give me 1 star. Do you know how much damage you caused me? Now you're using this snake as an excuse to make me furious." I was terrified, planning to try and escape or find a place to hide. But he lunged and overpowered me, holding the knife to my throat. His tone shifted abruptly, full of perverse delight. "You'll hit your girlfriend during an argument, and I, the witness, will get hurt trying to break you two up." As he spoke, the crazy man deliberately stabbed himself in his own thigh with the knife in his hand, blood gushing out. Then he turned and shoved the knife into my hand. Now everyone will pity me for being stabbed while trying to intervene. I was completely motionless, utterly stunned. Just then, the snake, which had been slithering on the bed, suddenly bit him with a fatal strike to his neck. He collapsed in pain, screaming loudly, "Snake? Why? Why is it here?" I was too terrified, so I crawled away trying to escape this horrific scene. The sound of police sirens echoed from a distance, and everything was quickly resolved. My girlfriend ran to me and cried uncontrollably. She had called the police. After the police investigation, everything became clear. Initially, I was very sure the owner had released the snake, but that wasn't the case. In reality, it was a hilly area where snakes frequently appeared, and that's precisely why he bought that plot of land for cheap. He's currently in intensive care and will face multiple charges once he recovers. My girlfriend and I were luckily safe. Since then, no matter how bad an experience is, we only leave reviews of 3 stars or higher. So please think very carefully before leaving a 1-star review, everyone. It all began with an invitation from a stranger. We just wanted a summer vacation full of memories, but we unknowingly stepped onto the thin line between luck and tragedy. To this day, I still don't understand how I escaped that situation. All I know is, if we had been a few minutes slower, I might not have had the chance to tell this story. The story starts with a summer vacation to London with my best friend Lizzie. We decided to treat ourselves to a trip to Europe before starting college. The first 2 days of the trip, we made the most of our time, having fun, exploring, and taking hundreds of photos. On the 3rd day, we were strolling on Oxford Street when we met someone. He approached us and introduced himself as Adrian. Adrian was tall, with curly brown hair, blue eyes, and a smile that made my heart beat faster. His voice sounded warm and charming. Adrian talked about an amazing party that night at his friend Simon's super luxurious apartment. The address was in Mayfair, an upscale area near Hyde Park. Lizzie glanced at me with excited eyes. I was a bit hesitant, but Adrian seemed really serious and polite. Plus, we were in London, and an opportunity like this doesn't come around easily. When Adrian assured us of our safety and mentioned his friend worked in finance, living in one of London's most secure areas, we accepted Adrian's invitation. That evening, I wore a simple black dress, and Lizzie chose a striking red outfit. Before leaving, we drank vodka in our hotel room to get a little buzz. The slight dizziness from the alcohol somewhat eased my initial anxiety. We called an Uber to the address Adrian had sent. Adrian greeted us at the apartment door with a beaming smile. The elevator took us up to the 23rd floor. The hallway was completely silent. No music or laughter echoed out. When we stepped inside, the space was empty, with no sign of any other guests. When Lizzie asked, Adrian explained that we had arrived a bit early, and Simon was in the lobby picking up guests. I glanced around the apartment. It was indeed luxurious, with large glass windows offering panoramic views of London at night. But the space was too quiet and isolated. Just then, the sound of a key turning in the door echoed. Another man walked in, taller and more imposing than Adrian, with a stern face and cold eyes. Unlike Adrian, he didn't smile. Adrian introduced him as Simon, but I noticed the tension in his voice. Simon merely gave a brief nod, then walked straight to the front door. The sound of the lock clicking shut made my heart almost stop. When I asked again about the other guests, Adrian replied they would arrive soon, but his eyes were no longer warm like before. He offered to make us cocktails. He even emphasized how good they were. Simon stood silently by the door like a guard, never taking his eyes off us. Lizzie and I exchanged glances. I saw the fear in her eyes. "We don't drink. Could we just have some water?" I suggested. "Cocktails will be much better. I've prepared special glasses for you girls already." Adrian insisted, his voice a little harder. I smiled faintly, feigning agreement, then pulled out my phone, pretending to text but actually opening my emergency call app. My hand trembled as I dialed the police, then slipped the phone into my pocket without hanging up. Adrian disappeared into the kitchen. I tried to stay calm and said, "Oh, this penthouse is on the 23rd floor of 89 Kensington Gardens Square, right? What a beautiful view. Simon, you have excellent taste." Simon still stood by the door, his eyes unwavering. I gave a forced smile and turned away. Very quickly, Adrian emerged from the kitchen with 2 pink cocktails in his hands. He constantly swirled the glasses gently with a slight smile and told us to drink them, saying we'd feel more comfortable. His voice sounded more like a command than an invitation. We took the drinks. I noticed a fine white residue at the bottom of the glass that hadn't fully dissolved. Lizzie saw this too, and she looked at me with wide, horrified eyes. To buy time, I suggested we play Would You Rather. Simon reacted coldly, calling it a childish game. Lizzie, calmer than I expected, joined in and asked if we should drink the cocktails immediately or wait for the other guests. Adrian gave a forced smile, but his eyes were incredibly cold. He stared intently at Lizzie and answered, emphasizing each word, "Of course you drink the cocktails now." The feeling of dread reached its peak, and I screamed my refusal. I said we wanted to go back to our hotel. Simon spoke for the first time, his voice deep and menacing. "You two can't leave." Just then, a furious banging erupted at the door. A loud, booming male voice shouted, "Police!" "Open up!" Simon and Adrian exchanged terrified glances. The banging on the door grew louder and louder. Lizzie clutched my hand tightly, both of us trembling uncontrollably. The door burst open, and 3 police officers stormed in. Lizzie screamed with all her might, "Help us!" I pointed directly at Adrian and Simon, explaining they had forced us here, wouldn't let us leave, and had tried to make us drink something suspicious. Adrian and Simon were handcuffed and led away in silence. The test results 2 days later confirmed what we had suspected. Both cocktails contained a sedative commonly used in date rape. If we had drunk them, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Adrian admitted this wasn't the first time he'd done this. Simon was a long-time accomplice. Both received severe sentences, especially after police discovered many other previous victims. We stayed in London for a few more days, but we no longer had the same spirit of exploration. Lizzie often woke up startled in the night, and I suffered from complete insomnia. The trip, from being a beautiful memory, turned into an unforgettable nightmare. Now, whenever someone asks about my London trip, I just say it was a memorable experience. I learned that attractive appearances and sweet words can hide the darkest intentions. Some memories, no matter how much you want to forget them, will stay with you for life as a valuable lesson about trust and the instinct for survival. I used to think a minor motorcycle accident in Vietnam was the only hiccup in my trip. But it turned out, the most terrifying thing quietly followed me back home, hidden deep within my own body without me ever knowing. In August 2014, I took a trip from Los Angeles to Vietnam. I had been looking forward to this vacation for months. The trip was fantastic. I tried so many street foods and took thousands of pictures. The incident happened in the second week. I rented a motorcycle to explore the suburban areas with their many rivers and streams. While riding on a crowded road, I collided with another vehicle. The impact wasn't strong, but it was enough for me to lose my balance and fall to the ground. My head hit pretty hard, causing a sharp pain. The other driver stopped to check on me, but I got up and said I was fine. There was just a small bump on my forehead. I refused to go to the hospital, thinking it was just a minor concussion. By the next day, I felt completely fine. I went swimming in a river near my hotel. The river water was crystal clear. I dove in, feeling the coolness spread through my body along with the distinct damp, earthy smell of the tropics. I stayed in the water for about 30 minutes, occasionally diving deeper. After swimming, I felt much more invigorated. 2 days later, I ended my vacation and flew back to Los Angeles. On the plane, during takeoff, I started to feel a little uncomfortable in my nose. Throughout the 16-hour flight, I kept blowing my nose, but the stuffy feeling wouldn't go away. I got home and just wanted to rest, hoping a deep sleep would make me feel better. The next day, I woke up and found my pillow stained with blood. My nose had bled during the night. I was worried, but still thought it might be due to the motorcycle collision. The bleeding continued throughout that day, and I decided to go to the hospital. The doctor said it was likely due to a sudden climate change and prescribed me an ointment to keep my nose moist. I went home, hoping the situation would improve. But 3 days later, the bleeding continued. It wasn't just flowing out. It was also flowing down my throat, making me constantly cough and spit. I started to feel my body weakening from blood loss and had trouble breathing. While trying to wipe the blood, I accidentally touched the inside of my nose and felt something strange. When I tried to touch it, a sharp, intense pain shot through my head. I screamed and collapsed to the floor, my hands still clutching my nose. It took a few minutes to regain my composure. I decided to drive myself to the hospital, my face and hands covered in blood. I was quickly escorted into an emergency room. A young female doctor came in with a small light on her forehead. She asked me to tilt my head back and breathe through my mouth. The doctor's eyes went from normal to wide, as if she had just seen something horrific. "Oh my God," she said. The look of horror on her face made me scared and confused. I sat up, my hands trembling. "What is it? What's in my nose?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped outside the door and called out loudly, "I need Dr. David here immediately. Emergency." I sat alone in the room, imagining the worst-case scenarios. The seconds of waiting felt like an eternity. In that very moment, I felt something move in my nose. A moment later, an older doctor walked in. He, along with 2 nurses, prepared instruments and medication. I became even more terrified. "I'll need to pull it out. This will be a very uncomfortable process," the doctor said. I lay down on the bed, feeling like the whole world was spinning. He shined the light into my nose, and I saw the expression on his face change too. Not surprise like the previous doctor, but intense concentration. "It's quite large, and it's still alive," he told the nurse. The doctor carefully inserted the forceps into my nose. I felt intense discomfort, gripping the side of the bed, trying to stay still. "I see it. My God, it's big." I felt something in my nose moving. The continuous sharp pain made me clench my teeth. "All right, try to bear with it." He started pulling slowly. I felt like someone was cutting inside my skull with a knife. The intense pain made me scream, unable to hold it back. And then, in one horrifying second, I felt something long and slimy being pulled out of my nose. When I opened my eyes, I saw it. A black creature, and it was still alive. I stared at the creature. I felt the whole world spinning. This was the thing that had been living inside me for over a week. This was the thing that had been feeding on my blood. The doctor placed it in a container. The creature was still squirming, leaving bloody smears on the sides of the box. Only a thin layer of bone prevented it from reaching your brain. I was speechless, lying still on the bed, feeling as if I had just escaped a nightmare. Now, 3 years later, I still check my nose every day. Every time I feel congested or uncomfortable, I get scared. It was a terrifying experience I will never forget. I no longer dare to carelessly ignore unusual signs from my body, and I will never swim in unfamiliar rivers or streams again.
I'm Lewis, 37, working in medical aesthetics. I've got 2 spots, one in Dallas and one in Houston, Texas. So this story isn't about me. It's about a friend who works in the same field, and yeah, I kinda had a hand in that whole mess. My friend Joey, straight up the most naturally gorgeous person I've ever met. Joey's 2 years younger than me. His parents wanted him to be a lawyer, but he bailed on that and jumped into construction on his own. He's doing pretty great, making bank off big and small construction gigs. No doubt, Joey's good looks have totally helped him land those deals. Construction work's tough with all the sun, wind, and dust, but it doesn't mess with Joey's looks. If anything, it makes him even tougher and more good-looking. The cash he's making isn't enough to keep up with his wild nights at bars and clubs. With his all-over-the-place attitude, Joey up and quit his construction gig again. I'm over that exhausting job. I want good money, but with less hassle and a cleaner, comfier setup. Joey asked me to teach him about the beauty biz. I'll hook you up with some courses. Joey cut me off and goes, "No need to waste time. I'll just come to your clinic to learn." After a lot of convincing, I finally agreed to let Joey start with some basic stuff. Joey's pretty sharp, so it didn't take him long to catch on and pick things up. It took Joey like 3 days to get the hang of waxing and hair removal. With his looks, Joey helped me pull in a ton more customers. "Lewis, I'm opening my own cosmetic clinic next month." Joey dropped that bomb on me, and I was totally shocked. "But you..." "Watching you work," Joey shrugged. "It's easy. Cosmetic surgery is not as hard as I thought." Even though I tried to talk him out of it, Joey's confidence just kept growing. Less than a month later, Joey's cosmetic clinic was all set up and running. Joey straight up crushed it again in the new field. Joey's making crazy money selling the whole responsibility and reputation thing in the beauty industry. But slowly, Joey's customers started complaining about the service. Joey fixed it by shutting down the shop, moving to a new spot, and pulling in a whole new crowd. With that slick business move,
Joey's beauty spots just kept opening and closing, running at full speed the whole time. He just straight up bought a big villa without even thinking about it. That was the only thing left, since Joey blew all his savings on his crazy lifestyle. On top of doing unlicensed cosmetic surgery, Joey also went all in, taking on cases that needed real medical know-how. And then things got way worse than just some allergies or complications. One afternoon, I got a call from Joey. As soon as I picked up, I was freaked out by a girl's scream, like she was in pain. Louis, what do I do about this allergy thing?" Joey yelled into the phone. Before I could even respond, the girl's moans got louder. I heard medical stuff breaking, and Joey was screaming and cursing. "Joey, what the heck did you do? What's the client's situation right now?" I gave her anesthesia. She was twitching with her mouth wide open. Oh my God, stop it!" Then the call just cut off. I called a few more times, but Joey didn't pick up, and the same thing happened the next few days. A few days later, the news came out about a girl named Cassie going missing. The police looked into her recent stuff and found out she'd booked an appointment for black hairy tongue treatment at Joey's clinic. Feeling like something was really wrong, I called Joey right away, but he still didn't pick up. 6 days after they announced Cassie was missing, the cops found a suitcase in the basement of the villa with her body in it. The villa owner? Yup, it was Joey again. Joey sold the villa cheap because it was falling apart, all to cover his out-of-control spending. After selling the villa, Joey also hid the suitcase with Cassie's body in the basement. At the trial, he admitted guilt and said he'd been hammered on booze and drugs while treating Cassie, and that's what caused the accident. I really wish I hadn't asked for help from someone so reckless and messed up. This story is based on a real event, the tragic cosmetic accident of Maria Pilar Cruz that took place in 2003 in New York. Maria, dealing with black hairy tongue, made the mistake of choosing a cosmetic clinic instead of going to a hospital for proper treatment. Then, Maria's life came to an end at the hands of Dean Fajilo, a self-proclaimed cosmetic doctor who started out just doing basic hair removal. Dean's perfect looks and sharp mind were his weapons, helping him trick countless customers into trusting his so-called cosmetic expertise. Behind that flawless appearance was an empty soul, long corrupted by alcohol and illegal substances. I am Diego. Ever since I became aware of everything, I've been used to living with my father's second family in the basement. I have never met them, nor do I know exactly how many people are down there. But I can hear their voices, although not often, only occasionally and by chance. I guess there are two people, an adult like my mother, and a girl, probably around my age. Having a second family of my father living in the basement seems so normal to me that I thought every house must have two families like this. Every day, my father would go down to the basement and stay down there for quite a long time. On holidays, my father would bring food and gifts down there instead of having a meal with my mother and me upstairs. After the meal, my father would bring the dishes, now empty, back upstairs. My mother would wash them without a word of inquiry or complaint. I have never seen my mother question or show any concern about my father's second family. My mother's attitude was always indifferent, focused solely on carrying out her duties as a housekeeper. Every day, without fail, my mother would clean every object and corner with great meticulousness. "Mom, can I go down to the basement to play with the people down there?" I asked my mother this when I was about 6 or 7 years old. "If you want to, or rather, if you can get past your father," my mother replied, her hands still wiping down the kitchen cabinet, even though it was already gleaming. Then why don't they come up here with us? I asked, still confused. It's very likely that your father wouldn't allow that. Indeed, many times out of curiosity, I secretly watched my father go down to the basement. The door was always locked carefully whenever he entered or exited. I was allowed to do whatever I wanted, to have anything I asked for, but I was absolutely not permitted to go down to the basement. Everything would have been fine if my curiosity hadn't been sparked by the voices of the people in the basement. The frequency grew, singing, shouting, crying, the sound of things crashing. Everything made me determined to explore the basement. One day after school, I came home and noticed that my father's car was not in the garage, and my mother wasn't home either. Immediately, the thought of going down to the basement crossed my mind, and I followed the curiosity that had built up over the years. I knew I wouldn't be able to get inside, but I wanted to get closer to the basement door and listen carefully to what was happening inside. After thinking for a moment, I knocked on the door. Immediately, there was a knock in response within less than 2 seconds. It was as if the person had been waiting for me right behind the door. "Hello," I greeted first, taking the initiative.
Hello.
It was indeed a girl, and her voice was very pleasant and special.
Are you Diego?
"How do you know my name?" I was completely surprised.
We live in the same house. I'm the same age as you. I think I was born a few months before you. I'm Lonnie.
I smiled softly. "That's right. We live in the same house." "Who are you staying with?" I asked.
I'm with my mom and my little brother, but he's not well. He doesn't speak or run around ever.
Suddenly, I heard my mother call, and I was startled. I quickly ran off, not even having time to say goodbye to Lonnie. Fortunately, just as I made it upstairs, I saw my father's car driving up the driveway. Ever since that day, I felt strangely happy. I had a secret just for myself, a very special friend, and I was always smiling to myself. After school, instead of wandering around or locking myself in my room, I would sneak away from my parents and go down to the basement to talk to Lonnie. She dreamed of having a life like mine, going to school and doing homework every day, cleaning her room every Sunday morning, and helping her mom with the housework. "Try it, and you'll end up hating them like I do right now," I muttered.
Life down here is very dark and suffocating. My mother never smiles. She's always either holding my little brother, crying, or getting angry. I've never been to school. You're my only friend.
I fell silent after Lonnie's words.
Are you still there, Diego?
"Oh yeah, I'm still here. Lonnie, you're also my only friend." At school, no one wanted to interact with me or have anything to do with me. They called me the child of crime. Whenever I asked my mother why people said those things about me, she would always get angry. The angrier she got, the more she lost control, acting recklessly, shouting while scrubbing the kitchen until her hands bled. I also didn't see any love between my father and mother. The attitude and look in my father's eyes when he gave me gifts were very different from when he brought gifts and food down to the basement for your mom and you. "Shut up, you devil. I've already put up with you a lot in front of my son." That was my father's voice. "It's all because of my only remaining son. If it weren't for you, my wife Laura, my daughter Lonnie, and my unborn son wouldn't have left me. You are the devil. Do you think cleaning those bloodstains thoroughly will wipe away your crime?" I held my breath, trying to hear every word my father said, as thoughts raced through my mind. "Lonnie, your mother, what's her name?"
Laura.
I ran to my room, locked the door, pulled the blanket over myself, and trembled with my own suspicions. This isn't real. I kept muttering to myself. The next day, I gathered all my courage and stole my father's basement key. I knew where he kept it. It wasn't hard. I just hadn't paid attention before. I took a deep breath and opened the basement door. There was no one here. Inside was a cozy room, filled with vibrant colors from toys and wallpaper. There were happy family photos of a beautiful woman, a girl around my age, and my father as well, a small cradle with a blue mattress. And at the end of the room, a small table with a portrait of the woman and the little girl, placed next to a crucifix and a few candles. There was also a picture that, when I grew up, I later realized was an ultrasound photo of the baby.
Three years ago, a terrible incident happened at the home of Mia and Henry. They live in an upscale area in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They have a 4-year-old son, Mike. The couple, Mia and Henry, have a large company, always busy with customers and contracts. However, they still try their best to spend some time with their son. Mike is a lively boy, very emotional and understanding. The horrifying story happened in August. Mia and Henry have a business schedule of about 1 month in Ohio. After researching many profiles on care.com, Mia liked a girl named Emily. Emily had 3 years of experience as a nurse and 2 years as a babysitter. Emily was invited to come to the house by Mia and Henry. The couple observed how Emily took care of Mike for 2 days before they went on a business trip. Mike and Emily got along quite quickly. The boy listened to Emily very much, which made Mia and Henry feel pretty secure and confident. They left Mike with an iPad for communication. While on business trips, Mia and her husband often called home to update on Mike's situation. "Hey, little buddy, you've got anything fun today?" Mia said on the phone with a gentle voice. "I eat very well, Mom," Mike answered innocently. The boy told his parents many things he did during the day with Miss Emily. Everything went normal until 1 week later. Mike suddenly became timid. One time the person who picked up the call was not Mike, but Emily. The boy did not dare to talk and appeared extremely scared. "Mike, come here quickly. Mom and Dad are talking to you," Emily said softly. Mike immediately approached, holding the iPad but not looking at the screen, at Emily instead. Mia and her husband promised Mike that they would finish work soon and going to buy many toys for Mike. Hearing his parents comforting him, Mike suddenly burst into tears. The boy kept asking for his mother. Mia was worried when she saw Mike's emotional turmoil. Emily picked Mike up to comfort him, told Mia and her husband to rest assured, then turned off the phone very quickly. Another time, Mia and Henry were worried when they saw large bruises on Mike's face and hands. When his parents asked what was wrong, Mike refused to speak, just looked down. Emily explained that Mike was playing without paying attention and fell down. Emily told the couple to rest assured because she knew how to make bruises heal quickly. Mia and Henry found it strange because Mike had always been very good, didn't run around and never got hurt while playing. During the last 2 weeks of the business trip, Mia and Henry called Mike more often, but Emily will be the one to answer the phone and give reasons why Mike doesn't answer the phone. Regardless of the time frame, Emily said Mike was sleeping. Another time, Mike was sitting at the dining table, but the boy turned his back. No matter what his parents called, he did not respond. Mia and Henry asked Emily to bring her iPad closer to Mike, but she refused. Emily said Mike needs to rest soon to calm his mind. The couple started to notice something strange about the babysitter. The next day, they could no longer contact Mike. The calls kept ringing until no one picked up. Mia and Henry immediately arranged their work and flew home. Around 8 p.m. they arrived home. Mia rushed up to Mike's room. Henry dragged his luggage into the house, called out to Emily but couldn't find her. The couple entered Mike's room. The boy was sitting neatly on the desk near the bed. Mia saw Mike and happily ran to hug her son. "Mommy's home, son." Mike did not react. His body relaxed and fell back into Mia's arms. The small face had dried blood running down the forehead. The usually lively mouth was sewn shut, and the hands were tied in a folded position on the table. Mia collapsed on the floor, holding Mike tightly with her arms, trying to scream but couldn't, her panicked expression and tears streaming down her eyes. Henry ran to hug Mia and tried to help his wife stand up. Henry didn't cry, wasn't angry, didn't panic. There was a blank expression on his face. Henry called the police. Mike's body was examined and it was concluded that the boy died from physical trauma to the head. Mia was so shocked that she had a stroke and had to be rushed to the emergency room. A warrant for Emily's arrest was issued statewide. After a week of searching, the police finally caught Emily. She shows signs of madness and loss of control. Through further investigation, Emily once showed signs of schizophrenic disorder. She had previously hidden her illness and constantly been overdosed on drugs. "That boy's so noisy. He should have sit quietly and stayed quiet forever." Those were Emily's terrifying words at the trial before she was sentenced to death. Mia regained consciousness and regained her health, but the shock was so great that she could not speak. Henry took Mia to San Francisco, California, a faraway place to start a new life. "We should have been more careful when hiring a babysitter, so this terrible thing wouldn't have happened."
I'm Colleen, 35 years old. I live alone and am still focusing on developing my career. My neighbor is Christy. She's a single mother with a 6-year-old son named Aiden. Christy moved into this neighborhood when she was still carrying Aiden. We got to know each other and quickly became close. Christy has a beautiful face, blonde hair, but her eyes always carry a deep sadness. I haven't heard her mention her parents, nor has any family come to visit Christy since she moved in. Christy's life was quite difficult with her job at the nearby Kroger supermarket while heavily pregnant. When it was time to give birth to Aiden, the two of them lived off government assistance. But I think that wasn't the hardest thing for a single mother like Christy. I often saw a man with a rather fierce appearance visiting the home of her and her son. Every time he comes, it won't be long before there will be arguments and curses between the two of them. Many times, Christy appeared with injuries on her body. I told Christy about my suggestion to call the police to protect mother and daughter, but she had a rather harsh reaction. "I'm so grateful, but this is my personal matter." Christy endured a lot, raising her children and trying to study more to find a stable job. Currently, the life of the mother and child has become much more stable, and the man rarely appears now. Aiden is a smart and understanding boy, with a face that looks exactly like that man's. "Good morning, Aunt Colleen." That adorable source of energy always makes others feel warm and touched. One evening, it was already late, and I was sitting on the living room sofa, finishing some work when I heard a knock on the door. "Aunt Colleen!" Aiden's voice sounded strained. I quickly ran to open the door, and the boy hugged me tightly, crying uncontrollably. "What's wrong, Aiden?" I asked anxiously. And when I heard the arguing and the sound of an unfamiliar car in front of Christy's house, I understood. I led Aiden into the house and poured him a cup of warm milk. After drinking the milk, Aiden lay his head on my lap and fell into a deep sleep. I gently patted Aiden to help him sleep peacefully and waited, knowing that Christy would come to pick him up. Around midnight, the sound of an engine revving and speeding away echoed loudly. Not long after, Christy knocked on my door urgently and called out loudly. I carried the deeply sleeping Aiden and walked over to open the door. Christy, with a bruised body, her mouth still bleeding and her eyes swollen, avoided making eye contact with me. "Let me help you clean your wounds," I offered. "No need, thank you so much," she said as she picked up Aiden and quickly turned to leave. I truly felt heartbroken seeing the two of them like that, but there was nothing I could do, as I had no right to interfere in their lives. The next day, following my schedule for a 3-day business trip, I left the house early. I left a note and some candy in case Aiden came looking for me and couldn't find me. When I returned, I was quite surprised to see that the note and candy were still untouched. After putting away my things, I took the gifts I had bought for Christy and Aiden and went over to their house. Christy, Colleen, you're back? Are you going somewhere? I asked curiously as I saw Christy loading a suitcase into the trunk of the car. Oh, right. I'm going on a trip for a few days. By yourself? Where's Aiden? I looked around searching for that adorable figure. He's sleeping in the car. I bought a little gift from my business trip for you and Aiden. Thank you so much. Christy suddenly became emotional and walked over to hug me. She said her goodbyes and began her trip. I watched as their car disappeared from sight until it was out of view. The following days were quite boring without little Aiden around. It's been a week. Christy and her child still haven't returned. Their trip must be quite long. That's fair. They deserve to relax and enjoy themselves after those exhausting days. One evening, while I was having dinner, there was a knock on the door. I immediately thought of Aiden, assuming he had returned, so I hurried to open the door. It was the police. I was a bit surprised and somewhat disappointed. They said they were investigating a case and asked for my cooperation. Do you know anything about them? Christy and Aiden? They're longtime neighbors of mine. They're currently on a long trip. Is this the car? The police asked, showing a picture of Christy's car, and I quickly confirmed it. How about this suitcase? I'm not sure. She went on a trip, so she definitely had a suitcase, but I can't remember the exact style or color. Inside the suitcase was the body of a 6-year-old boy, found when it was placed in the trunk of the car and abandoned in the forest. At the moment, we have not yet found the woman named Christy. The police announcement left me stunned. So, the day I saw her loading the suitcase into the trunk, I was shocked that my body froze. The police conducted a search of Christy's house that very night. There were no signs of a struggle, and no poison or drugs were found. The house was very neat and orderly. Many days and months passed, and the police searched for Christy's whereabouts continued. The news spread throughout the state and even made national headlines. There were a few reports claiming to have seen Christy, but after further investigation, it turned out to be people who only resembled her. I requested permission to organize a funeral for Aiden, the lovely and warm-hearted boy. I don't know why, who the culprit is, or whether Christy is alive or has already passed away. I hope that in this world or another universe, the two of them will always find the happiness they truly deserve, far from any pain and misfortune.
I'm Leon, 30, and I live with my wife in Washington. It's been exactly 10 years since I lost my best friend on March 13th, 2014. He was the one who had accompanied me since my childhood. His sudden disappearance shocked everyone. I can still clearly picture his mom's pained and haggard face. The search spread across Washington state and the neighboring states, and it went on for a year. Eventually, the police had to call off the search because nothing turned up. Every year on this day for the past 10 years, I think about him and go through the photos we took together. Today was no different. I remembered his social media account and checked it out. I was moved when I realized he was stuck at 20, while I've grown into an adult. When I checked the messages, the last one he sent me was also on this day 10 years ago, and I never replied. As I scrolled through our conversation, I was shocked to see how much he had to say. He used to say those things to me all the time, but I just ignored them. Maybe I was just too careless back then. February 25th, 2014, 12 a.m. Leon, you must be asleep, but I can't sleep because that evil spirit is watching me. February 25th, 2014, 3 a.m. Do you believe in heaven, Leon? I've always wondered if there's really a heaven for good people and a hell for evil ones. I read his thoughts too late. I did reply to the message, but it was pretty superficial and perfunctory. The more I read the messages, the guiltier I felt toward the friend I always saw as my soulmate. February 13th, 2014, 12 a.m. Leon, this is my blog. There are many things I can't tell you directly or text you. I ignored the link he sent. Why? I clicked on the link and it led to a private blog. There aren't many posts, and they were all published in a short period of time. February 2nd, 2014. I think I'm the only one who knows this, Leon. I was sitting by the window in my room and noticed a small space in Mr. Joseph's house. Do you remember him? The neighbor was really friendly and lovable. But no, that was just a perfect mask for an evil person. I saw him torturing his wife, Leon. February 7th, 2014. Cassie. It looks like she was murdered by her own husband. I heard her pleading in a very pitiful way, and then a sound of an impact. Nothing too loud, but clear enough for me to hear. And after about 20 minutes, I didn't hear Mrs. Cassie's voice anymore. Leon, it looks like I was discovered. That nice neighbor noticed me. I remember that year, Cassie went missing, and the police found her in the basement, having committed suicide. I remember that after Cassie's case, he started showing signs of fear and spoke less. He was usually very quiet, so no one noticed anything unusual about him. A week later, he didn't come to class. I texted him, and he said he wasn't feeling well because of insomnia. That was the only message where I showed concern for him. I kept reading his blog after that. February 20th, 2014. What should I do, Leon? My nerves are about to explode. I'm too scared to sleep, leave the room, or even take my eyes off the window. I'm afraid that the devil might come after me at any time. But I can't tell anyone about this. The devil's eyes are really scary. Help me, Leon. March 13th, 2014. I don't think I'll be able to escape the devil, Leon. I feel like I'll end up like Mrs. Cassie, in a dark place where no one knows. I burst into tears when I read these last lines. The last post on the blog was also the day he went missing. Unlike Mrs. Cassie's, his disappearance turned into a mystery that's still unsolved. But today, after 10 years, I've uncovered this terrifying secret. I cried a lot, feeling incredibly regretful for having missed so much. Once I calmed down, I called the police and gave them all the evidence. His mother fainted when she heard the story. I know she's been holding on to hope for the past 10 years. A mother's strong belief that her son is still alive and will come back. But the miracle didn't happen. The police found a skeleton in the basement of Mr. Joseph's house, lying curled up with signs of decay. The clothes were familiar, so it was definitely him. But we need to wait for the forensic exam results. After 3 days, everything was clear. He was killed by Mr. Joseph at night and hidden in that basement for the past 10 years. He renovated the house, sealing off the basement completely so it wasn't used anymore. Everyone assumed it was because he was too sad about his wife's passing, but in reality, it was a way to hide his cruelty and heartlessness. He got life in prison without parole. My friend's family had to face bad news twice, and now they have no hope left. They moved away to escape the pain. I'll never forget my friend.
I'm Francis, 23 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Boston, working at a software company with colleagues who mostly communicate through emails. I downloaded Tinder on a cold October night. Aliana's face appeared on the screen, lightly curled red-brown hair, eyes as green as emeralds, and a bright smile with perfect white teeth. Her bio was simple: personal information, a love for reading, cats, and a habit of having coffee every morning, along with a desire to find something special. My finger swiped right without hesitation. A ding sounded just a few seconds later. Match. Aliana's first message was unexpected. She commented on the sad look in my profile picture. We texted for the next 3 days. Aliana asked about my job, hobbies, places I like to go, and the movies I loved. She always responded quickly, enthusiastically, making me feel special. After a week, we met at a small cafe in Cambridge. Aliana was even more beautiful in person. Our first date lasted from 7 p.m. until the cafe closed. We talked about everything. Aliana had a deep perspective on life, and it seemed like she understood me better than anyone else. When we stood outside the cafe to say goodbye, Aliana said she felt like she had known me for a long time. Then, she kissed me. My heart raced, and I knew I had fallen for her. The first few weeks with Aliana were the happiest I'd ever had. We went to movies, strolled along the Charles River, cooked together in my apartment. Aliana always knew how to make me laugh, and I felt like I had found the other half of my life. But gradually, Aliana began texting me, asking where I was, who I was with, and what I was doing. At first, I thought it was just normal concern, but the number of messages grew. She constantly asked why I wasn't replying, wanted to know who I was having lunch with, and requested pictures, questioned why I was late coming home, and accused me of lying. One evening, Aliana suggested I share my location on my phone. She explained that she just wanted to know I was safe, and that she worried about me. I reluctantly agreed, telling myself that this was just her way of showing love. One night, when I was having drinks with colleagues at a bar after work, the doorbell of the bar rang. Aliana stood there, hair messy, her eyes wild. She accused me of lying for promising to come home right after work. My colleagues looked at each other in surprise. I felt my face flush with embarrassment and anger as Aliana dragged me out of the bar. On the way home, she screamed uncontrollably despite my attempts to explain that it was just a casual after-work gathering, but Aliana didn't listen. Gradually, I realized I was pulling away from friends, declining invitations to hang out for fear of Aliana's reactions. My phone always had to be unlocked so she could check it anytime. Aliana even started showing up at my friends' houses unannounced, standing outside like a ghost keeping watch. Every time I was determined to end the relationship, Aliana would cry, saying she was afraid of losing me, that all her past relationships had ended in heartbreak, that she loved too much and couldn't bear the thought of losing me. I forgave her many times, but each time, the boundaries were pushed further, and Aliana's control grew stronger. After 3 months, I knew I couldn't continue anymore. I prepared myself for tears, even anger, carefully saying that we needed to break up. But I wasn't prepared for what happened next. Aliana stood there, motionless, her face empty. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, she began screaming, throwing things around my apartment. A glass cup flew toward me, shattering. Aliana called me disgusting, accusing me of taking advantage of her, of betraying her. I tried to help Aliana calm down, but she pushed me away and ran out of the apartment. I thought that was the end, but no. 2 hours later, I heard shouting from outside my apartment. Aliana was standing in the hallway, banging on the door and screaming my name. Neighbors peeked out with angry and confused expressions. Aliana stood there, tears streaming down her face, accusing me of imaginary crimes, lying, taking advantage, even beating her. I called the police, but when they arrived, Aliana had disappeared. The officer suggested I get a restraining order, but I didn't. A part of me still felt guilty, wondering if I was the one causing all of this. Messages and calls from Aliana kept coming in the following days. When I blocked her number, she used other ones. I saw her standing outside my office, in the parking lot of my building, even at the cafe I frequented. I changed my schedule, changed my habits, and lived in constant fear. One night, I came home after work and felt something was off. The air in the apartment smelled of jasmine. I checked every room, checked the locks on the windows and doors. Everything seemed normal. That night, I slept with a chair blocking the bedroom door. In the middle of the night, I woke up to a faint sound, the sound of the door downstairs opening. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I whispered into the phone, saying there was an intruder. 10 minutes later, the police arrived. They searched the entire apartment but found no one. There were no signs of a break-in, no windows or doors were forced open. I felt like a fool as the officer looked at me suspiciously. One of them suggested that maybe I had dreamed it, or perhaps the noise was from the apartment next door. The officers left, and I couldn't sleep, sitting on the bed with my back against the wall, the lights on, waiting for dawn. The next night, I woke up to my phone vibrating incessantly. A series of messages from an unknown number saying I couldn't escape, that she missed me and knew I still loved her, begging to see me one more time. I was sure it was Aliana. I replied, telling Aliana it was enough, that I didn't want to see her anymore, and asking her to leave me alone. Then, from inside my closet, a scream ripped through the silence. The closet door slowly opened. Aliana stepped out, her eyes bloodshot, hair tangled, holding a kitchen knife. She whispered that she had been waiting here all day, and she knew I would come back to her. My heart stopped as Aliana advanced toward me, the knife raised high. I rolled off the bed as the blade plunged down, running out of the bedroom, slamming the door shut, trying to lock it, but I couldn't. Aliana slammed into the door, and I struggled to keep it closed while Aliana kept stabbing, many more times. I felt the door tremble with each blow and knew I couldn't hold it much longer. I screamed, trying to stay as calm as possible. I told Aliana I would talk to her, that I would go out, just to put the knife down. The stabbing stopped. I heard Aliana's heavy breathing on the other side of the door. I heard the knife drop. I counted to 3, then opened the door. Aliana stood there, tears streaming down her face, her hands hanging limply by her sides. I didn't hesitate. I lunged, grabbing her arm and pinned her down with all my weight. Aliana struggled, scratching and biting, but I held her until I heard the sirens outside. The neighbors had called 911 when they heard the shouting. The police arrested Aliana, and as she was taken away, she kept screaming my name, swearing that she loved me so much. Aliana was charged with trespassing, assault, and several other offenses. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison. I got a permanent restraining order, and finally, I could breathe a sigh of relief. I moved to a new apartment, changed my phone number, even considered moving to another city. Every night before going to bed, I check the closet, under the bed, behind the curtains. I jump at every strange noise, every shadow that passes. I still wonder what will happen when Aliana is released. Will her rage soften with time, or will it smolder and grow, waiting for the right moment to explode? I try to continue with my life, trying to date again, but Aliana's haunting presence still lingers in every new relationship. I see her in faces in crowds, hear her voice in calls, smell the jasmine scent everywhere.
I'm Rich, 37 years old. For now, I've managed to gain a life just like my namesake, financially stable and spiritually fulfilling. My childhood wasn't that. My body's full of scars. That's the scars of unhappiness that would never go away. Before my hell, I lived happily in a loving, caring, financially stable family. My friends were often jealous of me, having my mother and father taking care of me very well, adhering to my every needs. My mother took great care of me, while my father was in charge with raising me to be a good person. The most important thing I'd been taught was to be nice with my family, especially with my little brother, but I had no younger brother to speak of. I had never seen him at all. When I was 8 years old, it was when I realized that there was indeed a baby in my mother's belly, and the baby was due to come out soon. One day, when I went home from school, my parents told me that I'm about to be a brother. They were very happy, and so was I. As I touched on my mother's tummy, I immediately knew that it was a brother, because my parents always told me so. Overall, my family hung tough on the delivery, even though my mother constantly lost her appetite. She remained steadfast on her love towards me, even more so than usual. However, after a while, my parents' happiness seemed to have vanished. I didn't even see my little brother growing anymore. I hugged her tummy, asking about my brother, only to have an angry look back from her. "That's your sister, and she won't come to be." My mom then angrily left me in confusion. At the time, I wasn't able to understand what she meant by it. A year later, my parents once again happily announced the arrival of my brother. My mom hugged me tightly at the news. And in the mood, I promised to always be his protector. My parents took a lot of commemorative pictures for my brother, hanging them all around. My mother spent her few last due days by my side before my brother was born. She made me promise to love, to take good care of my baby brother without conditions. I was ready for it, and counting down the days I'd finally see him. I even practiced myself on the caring for him as well. One day, I saw many medical staff around my home, and my mother was in a lot of pain, where the door to my mother's room was locked. I was worried sick, yet my father reassured me that it's just the baby on the way, and she would only be in a little bit of pain, that's all. And on that same day, 6 o'clock sharp, June 6th, my baby brother was born. I was taken inside to meet him for the first time. He was so tiny and cried very loud. Yet as soon as I touched his reddish skin, he immediately stopped crying. My parents burst into tears full of joy, lovingly gazed at the two of us. My brother's named Dominic, and he grew up healthily, without much issues. Yet as time went by, I could see Dominic's nature clearer. He was very naughty and at times deceptive. Every time caught making a mistake, he'd often not hesitate to cry his way out or lie his way out. Dominic often attacked me, violently and at times very dangerous. Yet I always gave in, as I promised my parents, unconditionally. But deep within me, I was afraid of his joy in inflicting pain on me. His eyes, it was not of an average toddler. It's more akin to a predator, sharp, cold, and calculating. The more he grew, the harder he was to control, and his deception seemed to grow with it. I had once noticed Dominic devouring a raw beef fillet straight from the fridge. Yet my parents didn't seem to believe me at all. They thought of it as me being jealous. Their perceived negligence even drove me to the point of personal hurt, that I harbored a feeling that I was not their biological child. The more I thought of it, the surer it seemed. I mean, look at it. Everywhere in this home there's only Dominic. Dominic, Dominic. I was nowhere to be seen. Dominic might be the only child in this home if I wasn't there. When I was expressing my frustration to my parents, out of nowhere Dominic appeared. He threw an angry look upon me, the look like he was grinding down on the fillet. I was surprised with my parents' indifference. Why can't they feel it? Or Dominic had also devoured their souls already? My childish thought pulled forth. The days later, my parents' negligence was more and more evident, while Dominic ramped up his violence. That time, I stood my ground and paid the price for it. I was hospitalized due to a shoulder fracture. I was discharged a week later with a lot in my mind, where my mother took me to my room herself. She was much thinner and in a lot of fatigue. When asked about Dominic, my mother didn't say anything. She left me alone there, but I did see tears on her eyes. Due to the after effects of pain medication and exhaustion, I fell asleep. When I came back to my senses, it had already been evening. When I heard the sounds coming from my brother's room, I remembered that I hadn't talked to him yet. I hoped I could talk to him and make peace with one another. The closer I am going to his room, the more nauseous scent of metal and rotten assaulting my nose. It made me shudder thinking about Dominic devouring the raw beef fillet. I pressed open the unlocked doorway, then suddenly froze at what I saw inside. It was something straight out of a horror movie, and I saw it now right in front of me. Dominic was ravenously devouring my pet dog, Cooper. In the corner of the room was a human arm and some scattering pieces of flesh. Dominic stared at the intruder with his bloodshot eyes, his face smeared with blood, still chewing. He immediately threw Cooper's body to the floor and came charging at me. I yelled aloud, running toward the stairs. I screamed for my parents, telling them to quickly lock their door and call the police. Seeing their son's condition, they quickly followed. I hadn't fully recovered after the hospitalization. Then Dominic bit hard on my arm. The pain was soul-crushing, yet with my father's timely intervention, I made out of there, though not without a scratch. He had torn out a huge chunk of my flesh. The police arrived and had to resort to all extreme measure just to capture Dominic. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and was held in isolation in the hospital. The human arm in the class was of his fellow classmate. About the other smaller bits, I didn't dare think about them. My parents were devastated hearing about their son. What might happen if I was alone with him that day, I wondered. Now come to think of it, Dominic was born at 6 o'clock on the 6th of June. All 666. Maybe that was a sign? And I often wonder whether my family was better had my parents weren't so heartlessly threw my sister away.
Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. I know many of you choose these videos to relax and easily drift off to sleep. Before you slip into your dreams, could you do me a small favor? Leave a quick interaction and let us know where you're watching this and at what time. Now, let's begin tonight's horror stories. It's been almost a year since I last stepped into a McDonald's. It's not because the food is terrible or the experience was bad. It's because every time I see Ronald's curly red hair and wide grin on an advertisement, I find myself standing silently in a cemetery on a biting cold night in front of a small grave with the name Michael. I was 20 at the time, working as a mascot at McDonald's restaurants throughout Los Angeles. That evening, I had just finished my shift at a McDonald's branch. The other employees were cleaning up and getting ready to close. I was putting away a few items near the entrance, about to go change and head home when a woman appeared. She was middle-aged, thin, wearing a gray sweater. Her gray hair fell over her shoulders, and her sunken eyes looked directly at me. "Excuse me, we're about to close," I said, but she didn't move. Her eyes scrutinized me from head to toe. She said, "My son wants to meet Ronald." I looked at her suspiciously. She pulled out a $50 bill from her pocket. Michael loves Ronald McDonald and wants to take a picture with him. I'll pay you extra for your time. $50 wasn't a small amount for me back then, and her eyes seemed so sincere. Plus, the job she was asking for wasn't difficult at all. "Where is Michael?" I asked. She smiled softly. "Just follow me." We walked to a car parked by the side of the road. She drove slowly, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. I tried to make conversation to break the silence. "How old is Michael?" 8 years old. He's very smart." I nodded, waiting for her to say more, but she just stayed silent. "When did Michael start liking Ronald McDonald?" "Since he was little. He always asked me when he would get to meet Ronald." I nodded, looking out the window and realizing we were driving through downtown. There were only a few sparse houses on either side of the road. A few minutes later, the car was still moving. "Are we almost there?" I asked when I realized we had already passed a residential area. "Almost," she smiled and said. I looked out the window, still not seeing our destination, so I asked again, "Where are we going?" She kept her stiff smile. "To Michael. He's waiting." The car turned into the cemetery gate. The night wind rustled through the dry branches, creating an eerie, chilling sound. I shivered. "Why are we here?" The woman stopped the car next to a small stone pathway, turned off the engine, and then turned to look at me. "Michael is here." I sat still for a moment, trying to comprehend the situation. She had opened her car door and was standing outside waiting for me. I hesitated but still got out of the car. We walked deeper into the cemetery. My shoes crunched on the gravel path, the sound echoing in the quiet night. Large tree shadows loomed on the ground like giant monsters. She walked softly, as if familiar with this path. I followed, my heart pounding. Finally, she stopped in front of a small grave. I looked down and read the deeply carved inscription, "Michael David Thompson, 2015 to 2024, beloved son." My whole body trembled. "He's been waiting for you for a very long time," she said, her voice gentle, as if talking to a living child. "Michael, this is Ronald." I stood there like a stone statue, looking down at the grave, then back at her. "Can you tell Michael a joke?" she asked me, her eyes looking down at the tombstone. I swallowed, my throat dry. I had taken her money. I could do this, just once. I stepped closer to Michael's grave. "Hey, Michael, Ronald has a joke for you. Why did the chicken cross the road?" I paused, waiting. In that silent moment, I heard the giggle of a child. I was a little surprised by the laughter. It was the woman laughing, her eyes fixed on the tombstone. The laughter came from her, but the tone was completely different. It sounded like the joyful giggle of a 9-year-old child. "Why, Ronald?" she said in a childlike voice, her head tilted slightly. I felt frozen, but I still answered, To get to the other side." The childlike laughter rang out again, but this time I clearly saw her eyes. In them, there wasn't just madness, but also the pain of a mother who had lost her child. A few seconds later, she stopped laughing, her eyes returning to their former state. "Michael wants to take a picture with Ronald." She took out a camera. I looked at the grave, then at her. I felt an invisible hand squeezing my throat. I stood up, backed away. I can't." The smile on her face slowly faded. She looked at me with a bewildered expression. "Why not?" I quickly took out the $50 bill and handed it back to her. "I'm sorry, I have to go." I turned and walked quickly towards the exit. Behind me, the woman suddenly burst into loud sobs, tearing through the silence of the night. "Michael, Mom is so sorry." I ran like the wind towards the cemetery gate. Her cries still echoed behind me. I didn't dare look back. I ran until I couldn't hear her cries anymore. I walked all night to get home, still wearing my Ronald McDonald suit. My shirt was soaked with sweat, The next morning, I called my job and quit. I couldn't explain to my boss why, just that I didn't want to dress up as Ronald McDonald anymore. Years have passed, and sometimes I still remember that night. I vividly remember the woman's laughter and her cries. Perhaps I was too cowardly to run away. I could have stayed, taken a picture, and offered some comforting words to that grieving mother. I just wanted a Big Mac after school. But less than 10 minutes later, I was being dragged by my hair, my nose was broken, and I was sprawled on the ground. It all started simply because I dared to tell him to wait his turn in line. I was 16 then, living with my family in San Diego, California. As usual, I walked to the McDonald's on Broadway for lunch. While waiting in line, my eyes were glued to my phone screen when I suddenly felt someone shove hard into my back. A big, beefy man cut directly in front of me. He was wearing a baggy t-shirt with a thick, greasy brown beard, dark sweat stains spreading under his armpits, and a bulging belly that looked like it was about to touch the counter. His tiny, squinted eyes darted at me defiantly when I reacted. A sour, stale odor wafted from him, making me instinctively recoil. I hesitated for a few seconds, then mustered up my courage and spoke. "Excuse me, you need to get in line like everyone else." He turned around, his face flushed. "I'm in a hurry, kid." I tried to stay calm, politely. "But everyone else is in line." "I said I'm in a hurry," he growled, stepping so close his foul breath hit my face directly. "You got a problem?" Before I could answer, he suddenly grabbed my arm. A sharp pain shot through my bicep as his fat fingers squeezed my flesh. He leaned in close, hissing, "I'll rip your little mouth off." My legs felt like jelly. My face burned. Whether from anger or fear, I couldn't tell. I yanked my arm free, stepped back, and gave him space. He ordered and then moved to the waiting area to pick up his food. I continued to wait in line. When it was my turn, I ordered a Big Mac, fries, and a Coke. While waiting for my order and rubbing my still aching arm, I glanced over at him. He was leaning close to the counter, saying something to the young employee handing out food. The young woman looked at the receipt, then at the food bag, and shook her head. He started to raise his voice, demanding a free Big Mac. His voice was full of menace. The girl tried to explain something. He abruptly grabbed her by the collar, pulling her hard towards him. She screamed in panic, struggling to break free. I stood frozen. Other customers turned to look, but no one dared to intervene. Then a man in a white shirt emerged from the back. It was the store manager. He calmly said, "I've called the police. They'll be here in a few minutes." The guy glared at him, then let go of the girl. Before leaving, he turned back. "I'll remember your face." The store slowly returned to normal amidst whispers and chatter. I got my order, my hands still shaking. Stepping outside, the delicious smell of the burger made my stomach rumble. I turned into my usual alley to head home. This was a shortcut through an old warehouse district, and then I saw him. He was leaning against the red brick wall, holding a glass beer bottle, his eyes bloodshot. "It's you again?" he said, a twisted smile on his lips. He slammed the beer bottle onto the ground. Glass shattered, the sound echoing in the empty alley. I turned to run, but he was faster. He snatched the bag of food from my hand, taking a long sniff as if savoring his prize. "This is mine." He opened the Big Mac box, took a huge bite, sauce dripping down his chin. I stood frozen. He swallowed, licked his lips, then growled, "This is all your fault. You made me look bad at McDonald's. You're gonna pay." I stammered an apology, but he wasn't listening. The first punch landed hard on my back, sending me sprawling to the ground. My knees and palms scraped raw. He continued to kick my side. The kicks were so brutal I couldn't even scream. He bent down, grabbed my hair, and pulled me up. His face was close, and then the next punch landed squarely on my nose. I clearly heard the bones break. Warm blood poured into my mouth. I begged him to stop, but he just laughed maniacally. Just then, I heard shouts from the end of the alley. A man came running, followed by another, then two women. They surrounded him. One person yelled to call the police. He struggled, trying to break free from their grasp. A woman knelt beside me, wiping the blood from my eyes and mouth with tissues, her voice gently comforting. The police arrived shortly after. The big man was handcuffed and led away. I was taken to the hospital. My injuries were examined and bandaged. The big man was charged with assault and battery, and he received a 3-year prison sentence. Even though he was punished, I lived with the trauma for many months afterward. I didn't dare go through that alley. I even avoided the McDonald's on Broadway. I learned a lesson. Sometimes a simple right word can turn you into a target, and if you don't fight back, they won't stop. But I also understood something else equally important. Indifference fuels evil. If those strangers hadn't stepped in that day, I might not be here to tell this story. I'm never working the night shift again. Not because of the low pay or the difficult customers. It's because I can never forget the sight of bright red blood dripping down a clown's painted face. And more importantly, I can't forget the feeling of betrayal when I found out who was behind that makeup. My name is Lucy. I've been working at McDonald's in Riverside, California for 2 years now. The job isn't bad, especially the night shift. There aren't many customers, and my boss is pretty chill with the night crew. Usually I just sit there, do a little cleaning, and wait for the time to pass. The night shift also pays more, so I really didn't have any complaints. That evening started like any other. I was on the night shift at the pickup window. Around 1 a.m., I started getting really sleepy. My head was nodding, eyes closing, when suddenly the customer chime went off. I jolted awake, looked out the window. A figure standing at the menu board made me jump. It was a clown, brightly colored suit, a pale white painted face with a big red smile. "Hello, I'd want a Whopper." The man's voice was hoarse, sounding a little unnatural. "I'm sorry, this is McDonald's, not Burger King, and according to company policy, you have to be in a vehicle to be served," I gently explained. The clown stood still for a moment. "Then I'll have a bacon eider." I frowned. That wasn't on the menu. In fact, I'd never heard of anything by that name. At this point, I figured this was a prankster. "Sir, you need to leave our property immediately." I firmly closed the pickup window. I tried to get back to work. About an hour later, I'd almost forgotten about the whole thing. I was getting ready to shut down the ice cream machine when I heard a noise. Turning around, I saw the clown standing outside the pickup window again. "I'd like a Big Mac and a Coke." His voice was clearer and more serious now. I hesitated, thinking maybe he was just a genuinely costumed customer, and the restaurant could be flexible for certain late-night cases like this. And this time, he'd ordered real items. "That'll be $8.50, I said. The clown handed me the cash. After preparing the order, I opened the pickup window to hand him the bag of food. The clown reached out, but instead of just taking the bag, he deliberately touched my hand and held it there for a very long time. "Excuse me, could I get some extra ketchup?" he said, still not letting go of my hand. I tried to pull my hand back, but he gripped it tighter. "I need ketchup," he repeated, then suddenly yanked my hand hard towards him. Before I could react, he yanked again, pulling my body forward. I screamed in a panic. With my free hand, I grabbed the barcode scanner and slammed it towards him. "Let go!" The scanner hit his forehead, and blood started to trickle down. The clown released my hand, stepped back, his hand touching the wound. Bright red drops of blood dripped onto his pale white face. He calmly offered a very wide smile. I slammed the pickup window shut, my heart pounding like it would burst from my chest. Trembling, I grabbed my phone to call the police, then tried to reach the store manager, but Mike didn't pick up. I called him repeatedly but couldn't get through. The police arrived after about 10 minutes. They checked the surrounding area, but couldn't find the clown. They took a report and promised to increase patrols, then drove me home. The next morning, I arrived at the store early to report the incident to Mike. He was sitting in his office, looking tired. Mike listened, occasionally nodding, but I felt he wasn't really paying attention. It was probably just someone trying to mess with you. Kids like to pull stunts like that. You shouldn't worry about it too much. Mike looked up. I noticed a long cut on his forehead. The cut was deep, and there was dried blood around it. My heart started to pound. How did you get that injury? Mike raised his hand to his forehead, hesitated, and avoided my gaze as he tried to explain. I clearly remembered the wound on the clown's forehead. Mike's wound was in the exact same spot, the same shape. I looked him in the eyes. Why did you do it? Mike stopped smiling. What are you talking about? But I already knew the answer. The manager I had always trusted, like an older brother, was the very person who had terrorized me. I quit my job immediately and left. In the weeks that followed, I often woke up in the middle of the night, dreaming of the clown standing by my bedroom window. But the scariest thing wasn't the clown. It was the realization that the people you trust can become your enemy overnight. The real fear doesn't come from strangers, but from those closest to you. I moved to San Diego and started working at a grocery store, and I swore I would never work a night shift again.
I'm Bianca, 27, working in an office and making enough to enjoy the things I love. I've been single for years. Past relationships really broke my heart, but I still believe I'll find my other half, and I'm always ready to open my heart to someone new. Last year's Valentine's Day was just like every other year, quiet and nothing special. But that morning, I found a handwritten letter in my desk drawer. It was from Isaac, the new guy at work I had a thing for. He asked me to come over to his place for dinner at 9 that night. I kept reading the letter over and over, my heart racing like crazy. Was that some kind of joke? But his signature at the bottom was legit, and his handwriting was neat and confident, just like him. Isaac was the guy everyone noticed as soon as he started at the company. He was tall, good-looking, and had this confidence like no one else. He always knew how to grab everyone's attention without even trying. Out of all the girls into him, I was the least noticeable, so I didn't have the guts to tell him how I felt. I was feeling both happy and confused, trying to figure out why this was happening to me. I rushed through work, drove home, and spent hours getting ready. All I had with me was a red dress that hugged my body, some fancy heels, and a bottle of good red wine. I stood in front of the mirror, checking out my face, telling myself everything would be fine. I thought that night was going to be a night to remember. The road to Isaac's place was in a quiet neighborhood. The bare trees lined up under the yellow glow of the streetlights. The house was at the end of the road, and the light from the windows looked like an invite. I got out of the car, and the chilly February air made me shiver a little. I felt a rush of excitement as I knocked on the door. The door opened, and there was Isaac with his usual warm smile. He looked perfect as usual, with his shiny black hair and sharp suit that really showed off his confident vibe. "You're here." His eyes practically lit up with satisfaction. I walked in, and the smell of food and lavender from the candles filled the air. The place inside was really neat. The dining table was set up with flickering candles and dishes that smelled amazing. I felt like I was in a dream, but then a sense of unease started creeping in. We clinked glasses, and I tried to chill out a bit more, but my eyes just wandered to the paintings on the wall. At first, I thought they were abstract paintings, but when I took a closer look, they kinda looked like drawings of human anatomy. The details were so vivid, it was creepy. Some of them even had notes scribbled in red ink, like there was some kind of plan coming together.
I started feeling confused and uneasy, so I stood up and used the excuse of needing to wash my hands to get away from the table. The bathroom was at the end of the hallway, and the light from the dining table didn't reach that far. I walked in, and my eyes immediately went to the mirror above the sink. There was a red smudge on the mirror, like someone had tried to wipe it off quickly with their hand. I just stood there in front of the mirror, every stroke of the painting stuck in my head, making my mind race with a bunch of unanswered questions. All of a sudden, I saw something flash behind me in the mirror. My heart skipped a beat, but when I turned around, the hallway was empty. A chill ran down my spine, and I couldn't help but think maybe I was walking into a trap that had been set up from the start. Back at the table, the vibe between Isaac and me had totally changed. His smiles weren't warm anymore. They were cold and calculating. The room got suddenly stuffy, and time felt like it was slowing down in a creepy way. My eyes landed on a big painting on the wall. In the painting, there was a girl with blonde hair and big eyes. Sarah, that name just popped into my head, a former coworker who left a few months ago. A wave of horror hit me. I couldn't stay calm anymore. I stood up, quickly said thanks, and asked if I could leave. But Isaac wasn't letting me leave that easily. He stood up, blocking me, and the smile on his face turned into something pretty terrifying. Isaac stepped closer, and I could feel my breath getting faster. I saw a cold, lifeless look in Isaac's eyes, like he'd lost all humanity. I took a step back, but my foot got caught on a chair. He lunged at me, and I barely had time to think before I pulled out the fork I had hidden in my bag. I swung it, and I felt the resistance as it stuck into Isaac's hand. He screamed and stepped back just enough for me to make a run for the door. I rushed to the front door, but it was locked from the inside. I could hear Isaac's footsteps and curses echoing behind me. I turned around and saw him coming at me with bloodshot eyes and a face twisted in pain. His hands were red, but he didn't stop. I ran to the nearest window and used all my strength to smash the glass. As the glass shattered, I climbed through, even though my hands got cut by the sharp pieces. I ran like mad down the dark street, feeling all warm and wet from my palms and knees. But I didn't stop, too scared to look back. When I got to my car, I jumped in, slammed the door shut, and drove off. My heart was pounding, and every breath felt heavy, like I had just escaped from hell. When I got to the police station, I almost collapsed, my whole body shaking. My story made the police head straight to Isaac's place. They found his secret basement, where he kept stuff and pictures of his past victims. Isaac was caught trying to hide not far from the house. His cuffed eyes kept staring me down through the police car window, like he wanted to haunt me forever. The house, the paintings, and Isaac's eyes still popped into my head every night when I closed my eyes. I knew I dodged death, but the darkness Isaac brought would always stick in my head, something I could never shake off.
I'm Michael, 23 years old, and I'm an orphan. 5 years ago, I had a life that many people admired. My dad owned a real estate company, so our family was pretty well off. My mom didn't work a regular job, but she helped my dad a lot with running the company. I was an only child, so I got all their attention. Life was easy from childhood. For 18 years, I never had to worry about a thing. I never really thought about what life would be like without my parents' protection. The year I graduated from high school, I went through the first event that completely changed my life. My dad's company got caught for tax evasion. Not only did he have to pay back the evaded taxes, but my dad also had to cover the interest on that amount. Because of the huge amount of money involved, my dad was prosecuted and ended up getting a 15-year prison sentence. All of our family's assets were frozen. My mom had a serious mental breakdown. On the day of the trial, seeing my dad get sentenced and taken away, my mom cried so much she fainted. 3 months after my dad went to prison, my mom couldn't handle the shock and chose to end her life. I can't even put into words how I felt during that time. At the same time, I lost everything. I blamed my mom for choosing such a negative way out. I wondered why she left me alone when I needed her more than ever. I have to give myself some credit because at that time, I stayed strong, alert, and optimistic. I worked on building a positive mindset, finished high school, and continued with my university program. At first, I still visited my dad regularly, and each visit took me an hour on the bus. But my dad seemed unhappy to see me, and eventually, he stopped wanting to meet. By my second year of college, I stopped visiting my dad. I graduated from college on time and got an office job with an average salary. I met 2 friends, Manny and Oliver, and we became an inseparable trio. One day, my dad's old lawyer got in touch with me and told me about a wooden house in the woods that used to belong to my father. "It will now be yours." I didn't react and didn't have any special feelings about what he said. I thought how great it would be if it were a villa in a nice neighborhood or a luxury apartment. During last year's Christmas holiday, I invited my 2 friends to the wooden house in the woods for a few days of fun. We drove there in 2 cars, bringing food and personal items. Finding the house wasn't difficult. It was quite spacious, and I started to like it more. The inside of the house was modern and very clean, not at all like it had been empty for years. We didn't think much of it. We just unpacked our things and started the party right away. As we drank the wine and beer, we sang and danced, letting the alcohol take over. Suddenly, Manny stood up and shouted, "There's someone! They're standing upstairs, looking down." We looked around but didn't see anything unusual, so we just laughed it off, thinking he was just drunk and dizzy. We sang and drank some more until we passed out. I woke up with a pounding headache and my head spinning, and my throat was really dry. I grabbed a bottle of water from the floor and tilted my head back to drink. Suddenly, I heard a rustling sound coming from the kitchen. When I turned around, I saw that my snack was moving by itself. After I screamed, it fell to the floor and stopped moving. My 2 friends woke up, and Manny quickly found the light switch and turned it on. They asked me what happened. I ran over to pick up the snack, looked at it, and then sighed in relief, saying, "I think this house must have a lot of rats." At night, while Oliver went to take a shower, Manny, Oliver, and I stayed behind to clean up a bit. About 20 minutes later, Oliver ran back, looking flustered and a bit angry. He said, "Are you guys playing tricks again? You know I'm really scared of ghosts." We looked at each other in confusion and said we hadn't left the living room since he left. "Who was knocking on the door while I was taking a shower?" Oliver's words made the atmosphere tense. I told him more clearly about what I saw with the snack. Manny and I burst out laughing. "Come on, cowards. Your breath still reeks of alcohol. Do you really think you're sober in this situation?" Manny's words made Oliver and me feel more relieved. We put the food back in the living room, tried turning on the old TV, and surprisingly, it still worked. We drank and slept there until dawn. Just like that, we were drunk for 3 days straight. A few more times I saw a dark shadow. Oliver heard crying, and some furniture and food in the house disappeared for unknown reasons. but we didn't suspect anything because we were always in a half-awake, half-asleep state. By the fourth day, the food was gone, so we decided to walk to the nearby town to buy some more. We left the house at 9 a.m., and when we got back to the forest, we could smell something burning from a distance. Feeling like something was wrong, the three of us rushed toward the house without saying a word to each other. The wooden house slowly came into view, but was 80% burned. Luckily, the fire hadn't spread to the forest or the two nearby cars. I was stunned to see the last property my father left burned to ashes. Now it was just a pile of half-burned wood. Suddenly, a woman's scream echoed through the area. She rushed towards me with an angry look, like she wanted to tear me apart. My two friends quickly stepped in and stopped her. The woman ran into the fire, which hadn't been fully extinguished, and used her bare hands to flip each piece of wood that was still glowing. It took us a few seconds to react. Oliver quickly called the police, while Manny and I tried to get the woman out of the fire. After a while of searching, the woman stopped when she found something on the ground. She just stood there staring, and then let out a scream of frustration. Underneath the charred wood, a burnt corpse was found. The woman was crying and mumbling, and it seemed like she couldn't speak properly. We couldn't say a word as we watched the woman hold the body in her arms, even though her hands were blistered from severe burns. The police showed up after 20 minutes, bringing along a 6-year-old boy. The boy called the woman Mom, and she was both surprised and overjoyed. She ran over to hug him and cried loudly. This morning, the boy ran into town with us, and the police found him. It was confirmed that the woman was the boy's biological mother, but she couldn't speak. The burned body was identified as a monkey. She used gestures to show the police what had happened. She and her son had lived in the house for 3 years. She was my dad's lover. She also received a large sum of money from my father to raise her child. Another truth came to light, and now I understand why my mother was so miserable. She was the one who always stood by my father and helped him through tough times. But in the end, all she got was betrayal. Everything is over, and I need to focus on the future. I accept that I have a younger brother now, and will make sure to take good care of him.
I am Kate, 25 years old, a female graduate student with a peculiar passion for psychological stories. That passion sometimes feels like a curse, haunting me constantly. The house I rent is in a cold suburban area of Michigan, where the winter winds claw at the windows. It's cheap, old, and has a dark basement I rarely visit. But with its low rent and the quiet surroundings perfect for research, I couldn't ask for more. Lately, strange sounds have been appearing at night. The creaking of floorboards, persistent whispers. I assumed it was just the house being too old. One time, I went down to the basement to find some things. The basement door was slightly ajar, even though I was sure I had closed it. A lingering anxiety followed me like a shadow, but I convinced myself it was just my imagination. Then, one night, the power suddenly went out while I was working on my thesis. The house was swallowed by cold darkness. I moved down to the basement, checked the fuse box, searching for the reason the power was out. The flashlight beam shone through the basement door, and I smelled a musty odor rising up. The basement door was slightly ajar again, but this time I was sure I hadn't forgotten to close it. When I pushed it open, I saw faint shoe prints in the dusty stairs, muddy marks leading downward. The weak flashlight flickered over an old backpack, its contents spilling out chaotically. I picked through the items one by one: a sealed food container, a rusty kitchen knife, a bent lighter, and finally, some old newspapers alongside a photograph. In the picture, a family of 3 beamed with joy. The man kissed a little girl on the cheek, while the woman lovingly embraced them both. The girl's eyes sparkled with innocence and warmth. Suddenly, the basement door slammed shut. I jolted, dropping the flashlight. The light flickered wildly, casting erratic shadows on the walls. I rushed to the door, my trembling hands pounding against it. "Is anyone there? Please, open the door!" I screamed, my voice cracking with panic. My heart pounded violently, cold sweat beading on my forehead. I banged on the door, pleading, "Please, I didn't do anything wrong. Let me out." Zero response. Tears welled up as a suffocating helplessness overtook me. Then, a voice from the other side spoke, "Don't be afraid." I froze, my hand slipping from the door. It was a man's voice. "I don't want to hurt you." I stepped back, my entire body rigid with confusion. "I've been here since before you moved in. I'm sorry for watching you. I just needed someone to listen. I'm suffocating. I feel like I'll explode. Please." His hoarse voice trembled, teetering between desperation and something more sinister. I didn't respond. I didn't know how to process this. Then, suddenly, he started singing. A familiar lullaby, slow and eerie. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." His voice cracked on the high notes, making the song sound even more unsettling. I stood frozen, feeling each sorrowful note seep into the cold darkness around me. My body shuddered involuntarily. I used to sing that song to my daughter every night before bed. He trembled, as if struggling to hold himself together. We were a happy family. My wife and daughter were the most precious things in my life, but everything shattered in just one night. They said I killed them. His voice hardened, raw with pain and anger. But I didn't. Why would I destroy my own life? I forced myself to take a deep breath, focusing on his voice, analyzing every nuance in his words. Is he telling the truth, or is this just another story to deceive me? The question echoed in my mind, urging me to face it instead of giving in to fear. I ran away, not because I was guilty, but because no one believed me. I need to find the truth. I need to find the one who tore my family apart. He paused, his voice choking with emotion. I've wandered, hiding from every gaze, drowning in grief and guilt over my wife and daughter. His sorrow reached its peak, and he began to sob. I looked down at the scattered belongings in the backpack, my trembling hands picking up the old newspaper. The headline read, "Massacre, husband named prime suspect." Below, a wanted notice displayed a sketch of the suspect, his face. I glanced at the family photo again. It was him and the happy family mentioned earlier. A whirlwind of emotions crashed over me. I feared, but also felt an inexplicable sense of empathy. If he was telling the truth, then he was not a murderer, but a fugitive running from a crime he didn't commit. A broken man. Thank you for listening. His voice was soft now, as if a weight had been lifted. I heard the basement door unlock. I stared at it, my chest rising and falling rapidly. I sat in the darkness, my heart still pounding. But strangely, the panic had faded. Light from the hallway filtered down like an escape route. I stood up. My eyes glanced at the happy family photo one last time. When stepping out of the basement, the house became strangely quiet, as if the man had never existed. But his words still echoed in my mind. I left everything in the basement except the old newspaper. Finally, I sent it along with an anonymous letter to the police station, hoping that the truth would be revealed. I moved to another budget apartment, where there was no basement or old windows anymore. Every night before sleeping, I still wonder, will he really find justice for his family, or will he continue to live in hiding with that dull pain?
I've got a dream marriage, but a total nightmare for a wife who's supposed to be perfect. Joey, do you think I've put on weight again? Nah, babe, you always look amazing. I usually get asked about my wife's looks at least 10 times. She's super picky about taking care of her body. Back in high school, my wife asked her dad if she could put her graduation pic up in the living room. That pimpled up skin is gonna freak out everyone who comes to our place, honey. I get why she's so hung up on her looks. My wife doesn't work. Her job is picking out a good spa, booking skincare appointments, and figuring out what foods are good for her figure. I'm cool with that. I've got her back, and my money covers everything she needs. But there's one thing that's always bugged me, and I still haven't figured it out. My wife isn't planning on having kids, even though we've been married for almost 6 years. I've tried to convince her a bunch of times, even promised to cover the latest treatments to help her get back in shape. One time I brought her to a company party with me. Hearing my coworkers say I've got a wife who looks like a Disney princess made me feel pretty proud. I could tell how happy and proud my wife was, too. You're so lucky, Joey. I'm seriously jealous. That coworker's joke kind of turned into a death sentence for my marriage. Since then, whether it's a big party or just meeting clients, my wife insisted on tagging along. She bought a ton of dresses and makeup to get ready for those occasions. You should totally feel lucky to be married to me, Joey. My wife was fixing her dress while saying that line I know by heart, like word for word and everything. At another company party, my wife was just laughing away at all the compliments. Joey, what do you think when she said I look like Princess Fiona and you're like Shrek? My wife turned to ask in this kind of condescending tone after chatting with my coworker. We're equals, remember that? I was super annoyed because I always felt put down, so I snapped back. After that party, my wife didn't talk to me for a few days. To chill things out at home, I stepped up to make peace. There's nothing to brag about when you're competing with your own wife. Luxury bags, roses, cakes, and nice bottles of wine. There was a simple spread in quantity, but definitely not in quality. We clinked our glasses, and then I don't remember a thing after that. When I woke up, I found my arms and legs all tied up, and my body stuck to the bed with a ton of tape. Pamela, what does this mean? My wife was lying next to me, whispering in my ear. Babe, I'm sorry for saying those mean things. I'll make it up to you. She held up a glass bottle with clear liquid at my eye level, and the label had a picture of a corroded hand on it. No, Pamela, please, I yelled when I saw my wife slowly tipping the bottle of that crazy liquid. Just a little, don't freak out. Her creepy laugh filled the air as she dumped the liquid right in my face. I screamed, feeling like a million ants were all stinging me at once. I felt my lips bubbling, my eye goo oozing out, and my skin melting like melted cheese. My wife's creepy laugh was still ringing in my ears. Later, I saw the photos she posted on social media, and my friends were all laughing because they thought I was wearing a mask. I have no idea how I got away, or if my wife even untied me. I was feeling around on the floor, with most of my vision gone. I quickly found the bathroom after I figured out the layout of the room. The cold water came pouring in, and it helped ease my pain a bit. But then someone snatched the shower head right out of my hand. That same crazy, twisted laugh and the non-stop clicking of the camera drove me absolutely nuts. I just rushed over, grabbed the phone, and smacked Pamela's chest. I bolted out of the bedroom, trying to dial 911 while my eyes were about to pop out and my lips were still bubbling and sizzling. I got hit in the back by something hard, so I turned around to fight back after I shoved my wife away. A few seconds later, I heard her scream, "My skin! My face! Help!" The police showed up, and I slowly started to fade out. I woke up in the hospital with my face all bandaged up, and it took almost a month before I could see a little light. After a long time of serious treatment, I finally got to see my face again, and one eye was messed up with rough skin. After almost 30 surgeries, I was doing better, accepting that I'd have to live with one good eye and the other one being damaged. I saw a pic of my ex-wife with a long, crooked nose, and I found out her fellow inmates called her the long-nosed witch. I'm Ryan, 17 years old, living with my parents in Arizona. I have a passion for the gym. My father is my inspiration. My dad designed a fairly large room full of exercise equipment at home. Dad has an admirably toned body at the age of 58. My mother is quite young, 13 years younger than my father. Mom doesn't like to exercise but prefers skin caring and follows a strict diet. I'm very proud to have parents with outstanding and youthful appearances. But I have nothing in common with them, except for my mother's blue eyes. I don't care too much about this. After all, I'm quite handsome according to everyone's compliments. In my father's practice room, there's a wooden shelf containing many medals of large and small awards from gymmers. The top position in the middle of the wooden shelf is a picture of my mother when she was young. But in that photo, my mother has brown eyes. In my mother's room, there's also a very strange picture of a woman. I have never met her before. She's very beautiful, short brown hair and blue eyes like me and my mother. I witnessed several times my mother clutching that photo and crying, looking at her in so much pain and torment. I asked my mother about the photo of that woman. She just smiled at me and did not answer. After many times like that, I didn't ask about that woman anymore. My parents rarely show affection to each other. They respect each other's private space. They have a lot of love for me, but in two completely different ways. Outside of studying, I enjoy playing music and exercising in the gym. Everything was very normal until the last month. Every time I step into the gym, it feels cold and gloomy, a feeling I've never had before. At first, I didn't pay too much attention to it, nor did I tell my dad about it. Until recently, a series of scary events that happened caused me unable to ignore it anymore. The first time was when I practiced at 9 p.m. I went into the room and turned on the lights and warmed up thoroughly. I started the workout by jogging, but as soon as I stepped on the treadmill, the light in the room suddenly turned off. Power blackouts in the area where I live are quite rare. Looking into the next room, the electricity was still on. I thought the light bulb was broken. But when I got close to the switch, it was in the off state. I turned my hand on the switch and the light came back on. At that time, I did not have any doubts or feelings of fear. I continued the training session and finished at 11 a.m. The second time was also when I was alone in the gym. It was around 10 p.m. I'm doing shoulder raises using resistance bands. Suddenly, the song I was playing turned off, and a few seconds later, a child's giggling voice froze the blood in my veins. The laughter was so loud and haunting, I shivered and got goosebumps. About 5 seconds later, the laughter disappeared. My music continued playing. I stopped the exercise, went to drink water, wiped my sweat to calm down, wondering whatever just happened was real or I was hallucinating. That day I finished my homework early. I didn't tell my parents about those two strange encounters because they would be so unbelievable. The third time it was not at night, but around 4 p.m. It was the weekend, so I spent time practicing earlier than usual. I improved my exercises with barbells. Lying down to lift weights, I feel like it's much heavier, even though my weight remains the same. After lifting it about 4 times, my mind started to feel dizzy and ringing in my ears. I closed my eyes lightly and then opened them to regain consciousness. When I opened my eyes, I brought the weight down at the same time. From the horizontal bar of the dumbbell, a woman hung, her long hair hanging down, her big eyes wide open, her mouth wide open, filled with blood. In her arms, she held a crying newborn baby. The woman pressed her terrifying face close to mine. Her loud scream and the child's cry hurt my ears. I was startled and screamed loudly, unable to control the strength in my arms. The dumbbell pressed hard on my chest, making it difficult to breathe. At that moment, the woman also disappeared. I braced myself, used all my remaining strength to place the dumbbell on the support bar and sat up, clutching my chest and panting. It took a few minutes to calm down. I was about to get up and go to my room. Accidentally, I looked at my mother's photo on the wooden shelf. Mom looked at me, her unfamiliar brown eyes filled with anger and resentment. I was startled to remember the woman's face just now. She looks a lot like my mother, but it's the mother in the picture. I went into the bathroom and poured cold water down really hard to really wake up. Running to my parents' room, I wanted to tell them about the horrors I had experienced. But just as I approached the door, I heard 2 people arguing.
You are the one who killed my wife and son. You even destroyed your own face just to be here.
I was so shocked. I rooted to the spot, listening to every bitter word my parents said. It turned out that the woman with blue eyes in the picture in my mother's room was my mother's real face. So what about me? What is my true identity?
I'm Trisha, 27 years old. Last winter, when it was extremely cold and crazy snowy, I went through a really scary and haunting experience. I was in Michigan, and my boyfriend Joseph was over in Minnesota. Joseph got hurt during football practice, so we had to cancel our Christmas date. I missed Joseph like crazy and was worried about him, so I decided to drive over and surprise him. I came up with what I thought was the perfect plan: drive overnight, just in case there was heavy snow and traffic the next morning. It started snowing when I left home, and even though I was pretty confident in my driving, I still felt a bit nervous as it got darker and the roads got harder to drive on. The snow was coming down hard and the road was icy, making the car slide around a bit, but I figured I could handle it. About 3 hours into the drive, my stomach started growling and I was feeling tired and sleepy. I decided to pull over at a late-night diner to grab some food and recharge. The place was pretty small, with dim yellow lights on the old tables and chairs, and there were only a few people inside. The waitress was a young girl with her hair tied up and a smile on her face all the time. She looked at me, probably knew I was a stranger, and asked how I was when I sat down by the window, watching the snowstorm blow by. When she found out I was visiting my boyfriend, she told me I should find a motel for the night. It was going to snow pretty heavily in a few hours, and the roads were going to be tough to drive on. The girl was friendly and seemed to know the weather pretty well. I didn't plan on staying long, but as I looked out the window, I started to feel how bad the snowstorm was getting. Out of nowhere, a deep voice came from behind me. A tall guy walked over. He introduced himself as Robert and mentioned a few cheap motels he knew about along the way. I thanked him, but felt even more awkward when he overheard my chat with the waitress. But after a second of thinking it over, I decided to take the guy's advice. The motel he showed me seemed fine, at least it was close, and I didn't want to keep driving in this awful weather. The motel was pretty old, with moldy walls and furniture that looked like it hadn't been updated in forever. But for just $50 a night, I couldn't really complain. The snow was coming down heavier and heavier, so I had no choice. I locked the door and lay down on my phone, but then I realized I forgot to ask for the Wi-Fi password, so I threw on my coat and went back out. I kind of glanced at the parking lot and saw a black car struggling before finally parking right behind mine. I didn't think much of it, quickly asked for the Wi-Fi password, and headed back to my room. I locked the door again, took out my phone, and got comfy. That coffee I just had really cleared my head, so I'll probably end up staying up all night. All of a sudden, I heard a light rustling sound in the snow outside the window. It went on for what felt like minutes, step by step. I turned off my phone again, listened, and after a bit, the footsteps stopped. I rushed to the window and pulled back the curtains. Outside, I could clearly see footprints in the fresh snow, stretching from the parking lot all the way to near my window. A chill ran down my spine, and I quickly rushed out of the room and headed to the front desk. My eyes went wide as I looked around, but only saw the motel manager. My heart was pounding, and I could feel fear and tension building up around me little by little. I rushed to the front desk, hoping to find the manager so I could tell him about the footprints in the snow. But when I got there, the sight in front of me made me freeze. Right then, the black car I'd seen earlier started up and drove off. The sleek black car, with its headlights shining right at me, made me blink a few times because the light was so bright. I instantly recognized the guy in the car as Robert, the one I met at the restaurant earlier. The way he looked at me at the restaurant was weird, and now I get why. He knew exactly why I was here, and I had no clue what he was up to. I freaked out and told the motel manager the whole story, and he set me up with a new room. Even though I got moved to a new room, I still couldn't shake the fear. The room felt safer, at least physically, but in my head, everything was a mess. Even though the motel manager tried to calm me down, I couldn't shake the creepy feeling that was just hanging over me. I called Joseph, and as soon as I heard his voice, I just broke down in tears. The next morning, when the traffic looked better, my boyfriend booked a ride to take me to his place, and they said my car would be delivered the next day. I spent Christmas and New Year's with Joseph. Once he recovered from his injuries, we headed back to Michigan together. After that scary experience, I've never driven alone at night, and I stay away from motels.
I'm Dante, 45 years old. I'm the sheriff of the Phoenix Police Department, Arizona. As a sheriff, I have undergone and dealt with every kind of case. Only the case of the abandoned house on the city's outskirts keeps haunting me and my colleagues. That was the winter of 18 years ago, in the evening, when I was an investigator officer on the night shift. At midnight, there was a call at the department. I picked up the phone in a rush. That was the dispatcher. With a rather confused and urgent voice, he told me about the phone call he had had. A man with a calm tone called them. I just choked a few people, and now they aren't breathing. Then, suddenly, he laughed as if he were crazy. Number 13, McDowell Street. The man stated the address and then quickly hung up. My two colleagues and I immediately headed over to the address as we knew. When we got there, we saw it was a big house in a rich neighborhood. The house was dark and quiet. We knocked a bunch of times, but nobody answered or opened the door. In the end, we had to break a window so David, our smallest officer, could climb in and unlock the door from the inside. As soon as we got inside, our flashlight stopped working, even though it was fine just a few seconds ago. We felt an intensive smell like fish in the air. On the floor, there was a sticky liquid. After fumbling around for a bit, we finally found the light switch. When the lights came on, we saw a horrifying scene. A layer of dark red blood was on the floor, spreading and soaking into the expensive fur carpet. We searched the whole house but didn't find any unusual signs or the owner. According to the investigation, this house belongs to a wealthy couple named Thomas and Daria. They have 2 kids together. After examination, they concluded that the blood on the floor was enough for 5 or 6 adults. However, Mr. Thomas's family has 4 people and 2 young children. The neighbors around insisted that this fancy house had been empty for about a month. Our team worked for 3 months and still didn't find any clues or bodies. We couldn't track down the location of the person who called the police that evening. The case eventually hit a dead end, but my colleagues and I didn't give up. The Thomas family's house was sealed off for further investigation. A month later, the police got a call saying the door of the house had been opened. We also got a lot of reports from the neighbors saying they heard occasional laughter coming from the house. The investigation team showed up right away. When we walked into the house, we all heard kids laughing. Following the laughter, we went upstairs and found a glowing toy car. One of my colleagues said he must have just seen that car on the first floor. We all just stood there, looking at each other with confused and suspicious expressions. The house still doesn't show any other unusual signs. One evening, the police got a report that some kids coming home from school saw light on the 2nd floor of house number 13. This time, we confirmed that someone was still living in the house. We armed, just in case. When we entered the house, we quickly checked the 1st floor and then headed up to the 2nd floor. Suddenly, all the lights on the 2nd floor turned on, and it startled us. At that moment, David seemed like he was in a trance. He sprinted toward the stairs and jumped down, surprising everyone. As soon as David landed, the gun in his hand went off with a loud bang. My remaining teammates and I looked at each other, totally shocked. When he got to David, he was lying face down in a big pool of blood, with a gaping hole in his head. David's sudden and bizarre death left me and the rest of the team in shock. Rumors about house number 13 on McDowell Street started spreading everywhere. The house was even more tightly sealed off. A few months later, when the investigation had stalled, neighbors told us a strange man was living in the abandoned house. When we arrested him, that guy kept insisting he had Mr. Thomas's permission to move in. So Mr. Thomas isn't dead after all. The investigation team has reopened the case about his family. The guy living there was named Leon. He said he was a longtime friend of Thomas. But when we asked him about Mr. Thomas's family, Leon said that Thomas and his wife had divorced a long time ago and that he was now single. We started to have doubts about what this guy was telling us. After carefully searching the whole house again, we found a big wooden box buried deep in the basement. Inside the wooden box were the mostly decomposed bodies of a woman and 2 small children. After examination, it was confirmed that the bodies were Mr. Thomas's wife and 2 kids. We showed Leon the photo to see if he could identify Mr. Thomas, the so-called longtime friend. He said that he had many similar features to his friend, but his features were much more youthful. He pointed out that his friend Thomas had a big mole at the end of his left eyebrow, but this guy didn't have that. I looked up Thomas's family records and found out that his dad and grandpa were also named Thomas. The case of the house at 13 McDowell Street turned into a confusing mess and became a murder that shocked the whole country at the time. That guy named Leon hanged himself in house number 13 just 3 days later. All investigation work on the case has been on hold to this day. The members of our investigation team that year still remember our unlucky teammate David and hope that one day they'll find clues to solve the case.
I'm John, a senior student at the University of Chicago. I'm not the type of person who gets emotional easily. A life with little attention from a young age shaped me into a tough, independent person. But when the unexpected struck, it shattered everything I thought I knew about my own strength. No one could understand my pain when I found out that my grandmother, the only person I had in this world, had been murdered. My world, for more than 20 years, had only been my grandmother, ever since my early childhood. I had no idea who my father was. Many times I asked for information about him, but my grandmother would only look at me and shake her head. My mother, after leaving me with my grandmother, had no further involvement in my life. She was the one who raised me, taught me how to view life, understand love, cultivate patience, and even learn the lessons of forgiveness. Every morning I would sit with her sipping coffee, listening to her stories about the past, the hardships she endured, and the tales of her first love. Especially about my mother. I understood that my grandmother always wanted me to be closer to her. After all, she was the one who gave birth to me. I also tried to create the bond that should have existed between a mother and her son. But the more I tried, the more my mother pushed me away. Anyway, even without my mother, I was doing just fine. Until one day. At that time, I moved into the dormitory due to the heavy class schedule in my senior year of college. Every day I would still call my grandmother, and those conversations became an essential part of my life. Her voice was always warm and full of love, as if the distance between us had never existed. She was the only person I could share everything with, from difficult exams to worries about the future. One evening, before going to bed, as usual, when I called, Grandma proudly mentioned that she would be visiting my mom's house the next day to play with Gypsy, my 15-year-old younger sister. That was also the last time I could call and hear her voice. At first, I thought she was just busy, but then days went by and I couldn't get in touch with her. Her messages became short and cold, unlike usual. She said she was fine, life was good, and she had left my mother's house to go to Aunt Alice's. I asked why she wasn't answering my calls, but she didn't respond. A feeling of unease began to spread, but I tried to convince myself that she was just busy. She often shared posts emphasizing that her current life was going really well. Why was she refusing to talk to me? Why had she become so strange? Wasn't it that every day she always wanted to hear me talk? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being hidden from me. I called Aunt Alice and she said that Grandma had never gone there and that she was actually at my mother's house. I decided to call the police. For the first time in my life, I felt weak and helpless. The police went to my mother's house and Aunt Alice's house, but she never showed up. Aunt Alice insisted that she hadn't visited at all. My mother kept saying that she was at Aunt Alice's house, that she had come over last night and left in the afternoon, then went to the hospital for a checkup. But then, everything started to unravel slowly. As I sat in the interrogation room, the police began asking questions I had never even considered. They mentioned that my mother had referred to a debt I owed my grandmother, a debt I had never known about. According to my mother's account, I was a terrible and ungrateful person. While she never once reached out to check on me, she spoke as if she knew everything about my life. The feeling inside me at that moment was a mixture of emptiness and shock, overwhelming my senses. Although I didn't want to, I always had a feeling that my grandmother may have passed away, and my throat tightened, and I was terrified by my own thoughts. Finally, the police obtained permission from my mom's boyfriend and conducted a search of the house. In a plastic container in the storage room, they found the severely decomposed body of my grandmother. The police immediately arrested my mother and her boyfriend. After the interrogation, they quickly ruled out my mother's boyfriend as a suspect. And of course, there was only one person left who could be the perpetrator. In the face of accusations from the police suggesting that my mother did this to profit from insurance or social welfare policies, she adamantly denied everything, but her denials were completely unconvincing. I felt like the entire world around me was collapsing. My mother, the one who brought me into this world, turned out to be the heartless person who hid the body of her own mother just to profit. The story is based on a real case that occurred in Michigan. The story begins when the Michigan Police Department received a call from Carol, the daughter of Patricia Bennett, reporting that she hadn't been able to contact her mother for several days. Carol mentioned that Patricia was living with her sister, but she also brought up a conflict between Patricia and her son, John, regarding a debt. This raised suspicions for the police, as they had not yet asked about John, but Carol brought him up herself. The police continued to question Carol and grew suspicious that she was hiding the truth. They accused her of possibly hiding her mother's body if she had passed away, in order to profit from insurance or Social Security benefits. Carol repeatedly denied the accusations and panicked, which only increased the suspicion surrounding her testimony. The police believe that Carol might be hiding the disappearance or death of her mother.
You open that?
She fit in here.
I mean, she's in there. Oh, she's in there.